I'm recording the webinar now. Basically, we've done a few of these, and the way that they normally work is I'm going to give a little presentation on the overview of what the Panorama DTP is and our recruitment. And anytime through that, if attendees could please use the Q&A function at the bottom with any questions that come to your mind at any point. And then what we'll do is we'll move on to the live kind of Q&A part of the webinar, where you can meet all of our lovely panelists and ask them questions about their experiences and top tips on how to apply. And yeah, so just honestly use that Q&A function as much as you like at any point. And also Sebastian, who is the director of Panorama, will be there to answer any kind of more technical questions in the background, so he can reply to those in the Q&A function. And that's basically how it's going to work. And we, at the end, will send out a feedback form, and that will also include a way of signing up to our mailing list so that you can get the slides and the recording of the webinar if you'd find that useful. So please fill that one in at the end. That would be really helpful for us for keeping running these. And I think that's everything I was going to say about that. So I'll get started. Oh, the one thing I should do before I start presenting is introduce everyone. So I'll start with the person on the left-hand side of my screen. Safi, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself briefly and your PhD.
Hi, I'm Saffron. I'm a first year PhD student at the University of Leeds. I'm working with Dr. Graham Mann on the stratospheric impact of the Hunga Tonga eruption in January of 2022.
Oh, very topical. Fun. Thank you very much. And yeah, next on my screen is Tom.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Tom Logan. I'm a third-year PhD at the School of Biology at University of Leeds, and I'm working with Alistair Ward on combining natural and social sciences to resolve human-wildlife conflicts with red deer management in the Lake District.
Awesome, thank you so much. And next on my screen is Sarah.
Hi, good morning. Oh, afternoon, I guess. I'm a fourth-year PhD. I'm over in York with Dr. Pete Edwards. My PhD is basically building a laser instrument to analyze aerosol particles. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And next is Beth.
Yeah, hi, I'm Beth, and my PhD is looking at veterinary medicines in the environment after they've been used in the poultry industry.
Oh, very good. Thank you. And next is Ellie.
Hi, I'm Ellie. I'm a second-year PhD student at the School of Geography at Leeds, and my PhD is looking at how flows from reservoirs influence the ecological integrity of rivers.
Amazing, thank you. And if Ankita can manage with the Zoom, are you able, and also hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right, please correct me if I'm not, but
yes.
Yeah, is that right?
Sorry, my Zoom's been really funny, so I'm just going to quickly introduce myself and pop
Sure.
out and pop back in. So my name is Ankita, and I'm a first-year PhD student with the School of Earth and Environment. So I am doing my PhD with Professor Selina Steed and Dr. Maria Berger on coral reef aquaculture, and using that as a way to balance restoration efforts and food security in Southeast Asia. So,
Great, thank you. And yeah, good luck with the Zoom. I know it sometimes can be a bit tricky, but you've got loads of time while I give my presentation to just rejoin.
Cool.
So good luck.
Yeah,
Let me know if you need any more help.
Thank you, and I'm so sorry.
No, it's not your fault. Don't worry at all. And last but not least, Sebastian. If you wouldn't mind saying just a little thing about yourself.
Hello, my name is Sebastian Rost. I'm the director of the DTP, so I'm responsible for running the whole thing. I'm a global seismologist, and I'm based at the School of Earth and Environment in Leeds.
Great. Thank you, Sebastian. 2 seconds. I'm going to now share my screen and start my presentation on Panorama DTP. So hopefully you can see that. Could one of the panelists give me a thumbs up if that's all working? Yeah, amazing, thank you. Okay, so hopefully you're all aware that you've joined this webinar to learn about the NERC Panorama DTP, and I just want to give a bit of an introduction about what a DTP is and what that means as a kind of funding model for PhD students, and also what our specific DTP offers, because there are multiple different DTPs across the United Kingdom. So just an intro to the general funding model and what opportunities we offer and what we're like as a DTP. So as I've said, we are a distinct kind of funding model. A doctoral training partnership is what a DTP is. That's what that stands for. And what that means is we are funded to recruit a cohort of PhD students each year. Quite often PhDs are kind of funded on a one scholarship kind of basis, and it's individual and it's through the university. These funding programs are different. What happens here is we get funding from one of the research councils based in the United Kingdom under the UK RI umbrella. So that's the whole kind of umbrella organisation for all the different research councils, covering all different fields. So you've got NERC, you've got EPSRC, you've got BBSRC, all these logos there on the screen. We are funded by the Natural Environment Research Council, and what that means is that all of our PhDs have some sort of environmental science kind of focus. But the other thing that's distinct about this funding model is because it's a cohort-based funding model, you have this extra layer of support in the sense that you've got a whole group of people starting their PhDs at the same time. And the other main, as well as funding all of these studentships in environmental science PhDs, we also offer training to the cohorts. So one of our main focuses is to have cohort-based training where we get all the students who started in the same year to come together and do some personal development skills training. And we run a program of events throughout the year. And yeah, we offer fully funded PhD studentships. So that's just, I'll go into more detail on another slide, but that's like stipend, offering this training, and then all your fees as well. Oops, sorry, I'm just clicking the wrong button. Yeah, so as I've already mentioned, we are NERC funded and we are called Panorama, and we are a doctoral training partnership, and we're based at the University of Leeds, but we also have partners with the University of York and the University of Hull as well. I've already kind of spoken about, our funder, NERC, and that means that everything is environmental science kind of focused. We try to cover three kind of main research themes of atmosphere and climate, living world, and earth processes with all of our projects. To go into a little bit more detail, as I said, we're based at the University of Leeds and it's our largest partner. Within that, we have partners with different individual schools within the university, and we're primarily hosted by the School of Earth and Environment at Leeds. So that's our kind of biggest central partner or department in the DTP, but we also recruit students and have staff kind of representation in the schools of biology, chemistry, civil engineering, geography, and maths. And as I said, we also are partnered with the University of York, and as you heard, Sarah's at the University of York in Wackle, which is a atmospheric chemistry building, and all their works on atmospheric chemistry related science. And we also have the Energy and Environment Institute at the University of Hull. So that's kind of like a research focused institute at the University of Hull. And if I'm right, I think Tom started off at Hull and then moved to Leeds. So he might have a few, if anyone has any Hull specific questions, I'm sure he'd be able to answer those. The other thing to mention is that we try to have strong links with industry. So if you're browsing our projects that are available for a study next October, you'll maybe see some of them will have a little case label next to the title. What that means is that there is strong potential for a big industry collaboration where you get extra funding and you're linked with some sort of third party, whether that's a charity or a kind of company or a government department like DEFRA or the Met Office, that sort of opportunity can exist there if especially if the supervisor's got a strong link with one of these partners. So keep that in mind when you're browsing the projects, if that's something if that interests you. And the other thing to say is that if the project does not have that label, if a strong link can be formed with a partner, students can get a case partner at any point during their PhDs. It just involves the contract being drawn up, basically. So just to say, it's not just about the academic classic PhD experience. It's also about trying to train people up for industry jobs and government jobs and careers beyond academia. We welcome both, basically. Just want to go into a little bit more detail about what you actually get if you get a studentship with us. Basically, as I said, we're fully funded and we fund you for 3.5 years to do your PhD. And in that, we cover all your university fees, and that is regardless of whether you're a British student or whether you're international. We pay your stipend, and that's essentially a living cost sort of grant. It's technically not a salary. In the UK, it's not common to have PhD students treated as staff. They're treated as PhD students, and what they get is called a stipend, and that amount of money that you get it's tax-free, basically. You don't pay council tax and you don't pay income tax on that. So it's a tax-free grant for your living costs, essentially. And I know that in other countries it's common for PhD students to be treated as staff and paid an actual salary, but just to make it clear to any international students on the call that that's not how it works in the UK. But you do get the stipend for all your living costs and your accommodation, etc. And then we also give you a research training support grant. And so that's a pot of money that you manage, and it's to cover all kind of research costs that might come up during your PhD, whether that's equipment or going to a conference. So you budget that. And then we also have a pot set aside for students to apply to do a short placement. So you basically apply to the DTP to get a little top up onto your RTSG to do a short placement somewhere. And then we have a kind of central training budget to run the cohort-based training events that I mentioned earlier. And yeah, to say, I probably should have said this earlier, to be honest, but we have at least 24 studentships available for study October next year, and the deadline for applications is the 5th of January. So yeah, get your applications in soon. Just a couple of other little details here about our specific DTP, because each DTP kind of works differently. With us, you can only apply to one project, so please choose wisely when you're browsing. I'll send the slides out afterwards, but I'm sure most people will hopefully be familiar with our website. That's where you can browse all the projects. I've already mentioned the kind of case label stuff there, but that's just reiterated on the slide here in writing. And you get basically another RTSG top up if you've got a case partner. They provide you with an extra £1,000 a year and a placement. So yeah, if anybody's not already had a look at the website, please do. Please browse the projects. They're searchable by the theme or the keywords. And the other top tip for you is to please get in touch with the supervisor to discuss the project. I think it's a really, really helpful step. And I'm sure the panelists will agree with me that it's how you kind of suss out whether the project's going to be a good fit for you. And then we also have a whole bunch of other online resources and example interview questions, etc., that can help with your application. And with any kind of other guidance, email us. If you have any specific questions about the online application process itself, that all runs through the University of Leeds, and it's better to get in touch with the postgraduate admissions team there, and their email address is on our website. So just to give a quick overview of the recruitment process, as I said, you have the first step is the online application, and as I said, it's all going through the University of Leeds, regardless of which project you're applying to and which partner that project is based at. So all the applications go through Leeds because we're the host and the kind of lead partner for the DTP, and you need to provide a bunch of standard kind of information about yourself. The one thing to mention is that because we value industry experience, you don't necessarily have to have a master's. The minimum entry requirements are a 2-1 BSc or bachelor's or equivalent. And then if you have instead done some work experience and you're able to showcase potential for research or for PhD study with that work experience or professional job kind of experience, then you can absolutely do that, and we welcome that. And our application processes allow for that. So please bear that in mind, that we want you to think about skills that you've gained in other places, not just the classic academic stuff, although that's important as well. And as I've said, the application deadline is the 5th of January, which is coming up now. So yeah, good luck, everyone. Then once the applications are all processed, we go to a shortlisting stage where we have academics who are kind of familiar with the field. So, you know, we've got a separate panel for biology as for chemistry, for example, and they can score the applications, the paper-based applications and all the materials that you put through with your application. And then the next stage is interview. And I'll talk a little bit in more detail in the next couple of slides about our interview structure, because it's a bit different and a bit, not what people are maybe familiar with. But basically then we're having those interviews late February, early March. The exact schedule should be coming out fairly soon. And then we take a score from the interview and also a score from the shortlisting and combine those to get a final score to get a list of people that we're going to make our first offers to. The one thing to say is that because of government rules, only 30% of our studentships can go to international applicants, and that's a rule that we just have to abide by. So for if we have 24 studentships available, that means that a maximum of 7 of those can go to international students. So I just want to make anybody who's international on the call aware that we absolutely welcome your applications. We're just a little bit more limited with how many of the studentships we can give out to people who aren't home fees status. So yeah, as I mentioned, our interview format is a bit different to like having a classic one panel, one interview sort of format. We have had this a few years now, I think a couple of years of doing this format instead. And essentially what we do is we have 3 very short interviews with 2 academics on each panel, and they're themed. So the first interview will be on the academic project and academic skills and about the PhD project itself and why you want to do PhD. But then there's also, we're trying to canvas professional skills and the kind of soft skills that you need to be a PhD student. So things like resilience and communication, all those skills are really, really important when doing a PhD. So we have these panels dedicated to all these soft skills. And the other reason we do this is because it means that if you're not feeling very confident in one of the interviews and you don't feel that you've given your best kind of performance, you have another 2 goes. So it's a bit fairer, and it means you've got more panelists, so the scores end up being more averaged out, if that makes sense. So, you know, people tend to say that they get a little bit bamboozled when they first hear about the structure, but then when they go through it, it tends to work. That's the feedback we've had so far. I hope that the panelists agree with that. And yeah, just to reiterate that we've got example interview questions on the different kind of themes on our website in the candidate resources page. So please do have a look at that. And the interviews, we offer them in person or online, and we have like a budget set aside to cover travel expenses to attend the interviews up to a limit as well, if that interests anybody. And just another slide here on the interview structure. I've basically already spoken about all this. Just to reiterate that the skills panels, you know, it's all about transferable skills and stuff that's not necessarily related to the project. So you can get a bit creative with any experiences that you've got that you can draw on. A little bit of tips. I know this isn't maybe as relevant for some people at this stage because you may not have applied yet, and you know it's early days. But just to say again, it's really useful when doing any of the prep for any stage of the application process that you get in touch with the supervisor, because it's one of those things that it's like you got to work out whether the project's a good fit for you and also whether the supervisor is a good fit for you. So it's a really important thing to consider. And our interviews are based around competency-based questions. So it might be helpful to use the STAR technique when preparing if you get to that stage. As I said, we've got the example questions on the website. And other kind of tips is just to do some research. If you're going to be a PhD student, it's great to do a bit of research when applying to the PhD and have a look. There's loads of really great websites that have information on PhDs, what they're like, how to prepare for interviews, things like that. But there are a few links here that I can send you later on when you get the slides. And yeah, I know it's not always very comfortable, but I found that the best thing you can do is practice with a friend, like someone that you feel comfortable around, or record yourself and then listen back, because immediately you'll be able to hear the bits where you're a bit weaker with your answers. And also just want to say, I want to highlight a few opportunities that we've offered last year and this year. So we basically, as part of our EDI work, last year we ring-fenced 2 studentships for UK-based underrepresented groups and 10% of our interview slots, and we're doing that again this year. I forgot to update the slide, but that's now completely confirmed for this year. So we definitely have 2, possibly 3 ring-fence studentships for this year. So please, when you're going through your application, there's like a link to an EDI form, and if you fill that in, then you put yourself forward for those opportunities. And basically our underrepresented groups are UK, Black, Asian, minority ethnic candidates, disabled people, and those from a disadvantaged socioeconomic background. And if you are in any of those categories, then you're eligible for these opportunities. But you do need to fill in the EDI form for us to know that, basically. So please do that if that applies to you. And I think that's basically everything I wanted to cover in my presentation. I'm aware I've gone on a little bit longer than I planned, but thank you everyone for listening. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and then if we've got any questions in the Q&A function, we'll go with them, or I'll maybe kickstart with a general question, and we'll run it so that it's just open for any of the panelists to answer a question, and you guys feel free to just jump in and interrupt me, and I don't mind at all. Welcome any kind of input that you've got on this. So I think I'll start with the kind of a question that I think kind of starts at the beginning of all this, which is, how did you guys decide which PhD project was the right one for you? Has anybody kind of got a...
I can go first if that's...
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I applied for quite a few because I knew that I wanted to do a PhD, but the one that I ended up getting was definitely top of my list. And I kind of, when I was looking for PhDs, I decided that I was going to set specific criteria for what I wanted. And I wanted it to be analytical chemistry as a focus. I wanted it to be interdisciplinary, and I wanted it to be really applied and where I could see the direct impact that it would have. And this ticked all those boxes. And then also I met with the supervisor beforehand, and probably at the time when I was applying, I didn't think that that was really important, but I think getting on with your supervisor is super important, and having a good relationship from the start is important. So that's definitely something to consider. But that was kind of how I chose, but you have to decide what you're willing to compromise on, I suppose. So location or topic, like depending on what you want out of the PhD.
Yep, I would completely agree with that. And I also think it's what you've said about not just the project, but also considering where you're going to live and what the lifestyle is going to be like, whether you like the city. I think all that's really important as well. Has anybody else got a different kind of take on how they made a decision about their PhD project?
No, I don't know about a different take, but kind of similar story. I think I did it many years ago now. Make a real big pro and con list of the various things, and I I was basically deciding between sort of a couple of different projects. It would mean living in different areas of the UK, and I kind of decided based on that, you know, on sort of limited experience. That was one of the factors, definitely. But sort of the biggest one was I kind of looked beyond the PhD because, you know, it's only 3.5 years of your life, but then you go on to do something else. And what I wanted was to do something that was like would give me the skills that I wanted to go on and use. So I very much had an eye to like picking the one that was sort of that would give me the opportunities to gain skills in the areas I was interested in pursuing, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's really important, I think, that people kind of forget that it's easy to see your PhD as your whole life, right? But you're going to eventually finish, and then you're going to have life beyond PhD, and having skills that you want to have for your future career is super, super important. So yeah, definitely choose something that you're interested in, but also think beyond that. I think that's absolutely great advice to give, essentially.
I'd also
No,
met
go ahead.
with, I think, all of the supervisors that for the projects that I was like considering, and that definitely knowing that you work very closely with that person, it's a kind of unique relationship. If you've had a supervisor for a master's project, it's similar, but you really work together on a lot of things, and I think it benefits from having a good professional relationship in that regard. And so you're in a fortunate position of being able to sort of pick your boss in a sense, which is not quite your boss, but sort of equivalent. And I think that's an important thing to bear in mind.
Yeah, definitely. As you say, it's like a professional relationship, but it is also quite a close, or quite often it can be quite a like intimate but professional relationship, because it's such a unique situation being a PhD student and going into research maybe for the first time, and having this supervisor who's meant to help guide you through the process. So it's definitely important to make sure that you work well with that person, I would say. So it's another really important factor when deciding your PhDs. If no one has any other
I
points.
can.
Go ahead.
Oh, we're all jumping in. Who?
Yeah,
do you
no,
wanna go
great.
first,
That's what I
Saffron?
want. That's awesome. Go ahead.
Shall I go?
Yeah, go on. You go first. I'll jump in after.
I think what I found was when I first initially was looking, I was looking at very specific research areas. I was looking at the very specifically explosive volcanology things. But then when I did an internship over summer, which wasn't relevant to my research interests, but it showed what I was actually interested in was research. What I really enjoyed was research, not just that specific area. So I broadened my search a little bit, and had a look at the projects in a bit more depth and thought, is this part of my research interest? If it wasn't, does that matter? Do I still find it interesting? And do I want to spend the next like 3.5, 4 years researching it? So the area I'm in, although it is technically explosive volcanology, it's looking at the stratosphere now rather than what I've been looking at before was what was beneath the volcanoes. What I'm finding at the moment is actually I'm really enjoying the new stuff. So I think try not to have an idea of what you want to do and a rough area, but don't completely constrain yourself to that area. And then the other thing was I basically decided very early on from conversations with other PhD students was I wanted a CDT or a DTP because you get all the extra bits, you get loads of training, you start with loads of people, and that starting with lots of people rather than just on your own was really important to me, because like if you're on your own, I guess it depends on what you're like, but if you're on your own, you feel very on your own, whereas a DTP and CDT, you feel very less. You feel part of a community a lot more easily.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I'd done my PhD in a DTP or CDT, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, Tom, I know you were waiting to speak next.
Yeah, sorry for those who heard me say this last year. I feel like I'm going to repeat myself a few times. So Sarah, Katja, and Seb, sorry. But
All right.
the bit around like what made me apply for what I do, there's bits that some people have said that all resonate very clearly. One of them was the key thing that made me apply was the PhD that I'm now doing was actually designed by the lead supervisor out of my master's thesis. So it's a continuation of the study that I did for my master's by research, and it's with the same lead supervisor who we built up an amazing relationship of working together. As Sarah said, you got to think about who it is you're going to be working with as well, and building up a really good rapport with that person is really important. And again, I had this big idea of what I wanted to keep looking at and how we could broaden the project. In how was it 2019 that I put that in? That's ridiculous. But feeling so old now. But it's the bit of, you know, how do I take what I wanted to do and push that even further? I've now added social scientists onto my repertoire, which I really did not ever see coming. And been able to work with even more people who I never thought I would. So yes, I got the same lead supervisor. Still have a supervisor based at Hull who is a social scientist and marine biologist. So I've even been learning a bit of marine stuff in the background, which is different. And working with someone who's considered to be the world's leading deer biologist up in Glasgow. So I've got all these different people I'm working with, all these different contacts that I'm making. And the supervisors you pick, the project that you pick, they can help really push you even further out of the boundaries than you expected and introduce you to people that you never thought you would meet, and that can really open doors for you after your PhD as well. And I think that's part of what's really important about your supervisors, is what they can help get you to at the end, not just the fact that you'll have a PhD after your name.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to think, I think, yeah, with that long-term kind of goal stuff is really important as well. And also just, yeah, keeping it interesting. So it seems that there's, you know, everyone's got similar ideas, or make sure that you get on well with the supervisor and that you're passionate about the work, but then also keep an open mind about the other things that you might get interested in along the way. And yeah, no, all great. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to move on to another question, if that's all right. Just more around applying for PhDs and the actual process. But like, if you had to give like one kind of piece of advice about applying for a PhD or working on your application, what would it be?
Can I go for this one?
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
Yeah, I think I spent a very, very long time beautifying my covering letter because I sent it to loads of people and it's gone through loads of filtering processes. And I think like my main sort of tip would be to make your covering letter, whatever you call it, your statement of purpose or covering letter, just the first sort of paragraph to really, really highlight who you are, what you've done so far, and what skills you bring. And it took me I think, so I've spent the last 3 years working before my PhD. So it took me almost 2 years to try and sort of beautify that one paragraph because I had everything else in place in terms of what I wanted to say. It's just that sort of first paragraph of how I want the person reading it to see me in an instant. So I think sort of my top tip in terms of the writing part of it would be to really sort of nail down that one paragraph and to see sort of examples of other people's sort of covering letter as well, and get your friends and get your peers and mentors to also have a look at it because you want both perspectives.
Yeah, I think this came up in the last webinar that someone was saying they got their mum to read through their personal statement and they wanted a lay person's view on whether it was understandable and whether it had that kind of impact. So as well as getting like maybe someone, if you're doing a master's, getting like a academic to look something over, but then also getting friends and family who've got no idea what you're doing to look it over to make sure it kind of has that immediate impact and you're being concise. And I think that's really, really useful advice. Has anybody else got like a top tip on the kind of applying for the PhD and all the you know, or whether that's interview or whether that's application stage?
I can jump in again slightly here. Not so much about the interview, because the interview has changed since I did it, because I did it during the lockdowns.
Yep.
But for the application itself, Katya has said it, and a couple of us have said it. Message the supervisor. There is a reason for that. because they will be able to give you far more information in a 10-minute or half an hour Zoom talk than the initial advert will actually tell you about the project. They can go into far more detail about their ideas of how to innovate and how to develop the project further, and take those ideas and turn them into your own. So not just do exactly what they've said, but come up with your own ideas of how you might like to change it. There were things I put in my application that we've ended up doing, things I put in that we've ended up not doing because we haven't had the time or the money, or I'm already doing too much. But actually communicating with them and then bringing that into your application process is really how you start to stand out from the crowd as someone who understands the core of what it is that is looking to be achieved, even if that isn't what you end up doing. But think about how it is you can innovate your project, because that will really stand out at the application stage. And communication with the supervisor will really help with that. Read the additional material that is on the adverts as well, because that will really help formulate those ideas too.
Yeah, exactly. I think that initiative thing is, oh, sorry, I saw Safi, you were about to speak. I've cut you off. Go on, go ahead.
No, I was just going to bounce off of what Tom said. Was I really would encourage emailing the supervisors, because I mean, I was very lucky that my Sandeep and Graham offered to have a look over my personal statement and do a little bit of a mock interview. So don't expect that, but if they offer it, take them up on it. Because it meant that, especially with the different layout of the interview, I had a lot more of a practice in my mind and knew what was going on. And then the other thing was, especially if you're still in uni, and I think some unis offer it to alumni, in that if you have a career service, a lot of them will offer things like they can look over your CV, or they can do practice interviews with you and things like that. So I use that for all of my applications. So basically just look at what support there is through your university at the moment, or what your support supervisors could offer you, and take them up on it.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think it's coming up. It's basically, it seems to be like the key thing is reaching out to the supervisor. And we've actually just had a follow-up question on that, which is like, has anyone got any tips for how to reach out to them? I guess how to approach them. I suppose sometimes from the perspective of an undergraduate, it can be a bit scary to email someone with prof on their name.
So if I could jump in,
Yeah,
I think
of course.
like if you're looking on the on a findaphd.com or an application thing, they'll be listed, and they should have a contact information, or the information should be listed there. So whatever information is listed there, that's the one to use. Usually that'll be their university email, in which case you can just email it. I wouldn't overthink it, like a polite, respectful, but friendly and concise email expressing interest, potentially a meeting or a Zoom call or whatever. I think that's what I did, and it worked out just fine.
Yeah, I think off the back of that, I was kind of thinking, oh, I've got to email the supervisor. I hope they like me. I need to, but actually when I actually spoke to the supervisor, I realized that we were on the same team, because we both wanted the project. We were both passionate about the project and wanted to get the funding. So we kind of worked together. So I think like you say, don't be intimidated, like just go for it, and obviously be polite and really try and get across how interested you are in the project, because that will definitely help you.
Can I just bounce off of that? In the I remember when I was applying, some of the supervisors were saying like they are very much on our team. So if you think about the number of projects that they have across all of the DTPs, all the DTP, they want their project to go through, which means that if they will push you if you're applying for their project. So I would encourage, like, if you're sending them an email, don't just be like, hi, my name is Safi, I'm interested in your project, full stop, can we have a meeting? I would suggest doing something like saying something like, hi, my name is Saffron, this is what my research interest is, just a sentence, then say like specifically what project they're looking at, because some of them have a couple, and then basically like maybe 4-sentence version of what your personal statement is. So who you are, what you do at the moment, why you're interested, and then could you have a meeting? And the mindset I go is like, the worst that happens, they ignore it. Most of them won't. So, but don't stress about it, but do email them.
And if they do ignore it, they're probably busy. So just send a follow-up.
Yeah.
You know, it's
So,
quite.
yeah, I was just about to say that. I was like, oh, they haven't replied. I'm not going to get this one. And then 2 months later, I heard back and I was like, oh my God, I'd like taken this off my spreadsheet. Like, so yeah, but I should have sent a follow-up email sooner. So definitely do that. That's good advice.
Yeah, I think especially this time of year, everyone's getting really busy and they're getting ready to try and have some level of break over Christmas as well. And obviously that's not necessarily ideal with applications due early January. There is another route to consider as well that hasn't necessarily been said, which is for all these academics, they all have online profiles for their university, whether it's Leeds, whether it's Hull, and whether it's York. They all have online profiles, and all of them have listed their current postgrad students. If you are not getting much success with the academic themselves, you can also communicate with the students. Take a look and see whether they're panorama students. And you know, go and have a conversation with them as well. This is slightly off of the writing the application, but this is more to do with like whether, back to what we were saying before about whether the person might be a good fit for you. Ask the current postgrads as to what this person is like to work with. Is this person very supportive? Is this person very challenging? Is this person very vacant? Is this person over present? All those things can be ideal for some people and hell for others. So talking to the current postgrads is a really good idea for helping you get a gauge for what supervisor is like from a supervisory perspective as well.
Yeah, definitely. I saw Ellie. I think you looked like you were maybe going to jump in there at some point.
I was just going to suggest also that you should contact current students because no one knows the supervisor better than the current student and how they work and whether that will suit you or not. And also, even if their current student isn't a panorama student, like the application processes aren't so different really. So, you know, I've like looked over personal statements for other students before, like we have an idea of how it all works, even if it isn't exactly the same. So yeah, we're more than happy to help and maybe slightly quicker at replying to our emails, but not always.
Yeah, and if you're able to go in person, it's great to go to the department, actually meet the students, have a cup of tea, have a cup of coffee, and just see the department and see whether it's giving you the impression of, yeah, I wanna work here and I want to study here. I think that's like obviously a Zoom call is great, especially for people who can't make the trip to go in person. But if you can go in person, I think that can be really beneficial as well. A good way to meet students and kind of get the vibe, because as I think you both were kind of saying, some supervisors are very light touch and hands off, and that's great for people who are naturally very independent. Other supervisors are a lot more heavily involved and want much more regular updates on what's going on, and other students are going to prefer that way of working. So it's not necessarily that, it's about finding a good personality fit for you. It's not necessarily about there being one right way to do a PhD or one wrong way to do a PhD. It's just about making sure that the individual, you're all happy with that working relationship, since it's such a vital relationship for your PhD, because they're they're the main line of academic support all the way through it. So I think that's really, really important. Has anybody got any other general kind of application tips or things to say?
I think I think always I had two things to say. It's like always, and I know this maybe isn't possible to do too much of in your covering letter, but always sort of giving an example when you sort of talk about a skill that you have. So for example, saying, okay, I have team working skills, but not just like that's a very sort of open-ended statement, but backing that up in terms of and making it something a little bit more relevant to the project maybe. So talking about where you got that skill from and what that's led to, if at all any. And I think this was something that I did during the interview and during my informal conversation with my supervisor, and I had the opportunity to do a mock interview like Safi did as well, which was great. It really, really helped me. Maybe not so much in your covering letter, but sort of where you can give an example for any of the skills, technical or non-technical, I think is really useful. That was my first tip. My second tip was that I'm an international student, so every time I would email my supervisors, I would always see what time it was in the UK, and I'd say, like, I'd start my email with good morning or good afternoon, or good evening sometimes if I was really keen. And I think they really appreciated that, because when I had my mock interview, they're like, oh, you always like look up what the time of the UK is, and you always like, you know, address it really, really sweetly. So we really appreciate that. So yeah, brownie points. And I got told off when I was in my undergrad for calling someone by their name when I started my email. So I said, "Dear Dr. Colin," and they were like, "No, you're not my friend. We're not friends. So please address me by my surname, or address me, or just don't address me. Just say good morning." And ever since then, I've just been saying good morning or good afternoon during when I write a really formal email. So that's something that I follow. But yeah.
Yeah, I think for some supervisors, I think the general thing I would say is, yeah, if for an email when you've not met them before, go like doctor or professor and then their surname. But then a lot of them are quite, you know, if someone emails me and goes, "Dear Katja," I'm completely happy with that, but it's worth just checking again, it's about the vibe of the person, isn't it? See how they reply, and again, see whether that works for you in the kind of if their attitude is compatible with you. Basically, that's the type of thing you should definitely be aware of. I just there was something I wanted to say that linked back to what Tom mentioned there about, you know, getting in touch now because the Christmas break is coming up. And one thing I forgot to say in my presentation is that, yeah, the University of Leeds starts its Christmas break on the 21st or the 22nd of December, and then we come back on the 2nd of January, and then the application deadline is the 5th of January. So that's designed so that you have Christmas to work on the application, but I just want to make everybody aware that there will not be staff support during the Christmas holidays because the university is closed. So you're not going to get answers to emails from me or from the admissions team over that time. As for academics, well, it depends whether they're looking at their emails or not. But I just wanted to be transparent and make everyone aware that that's, and the reason that the timings are the way they are is because we have to work with a kind of set recruitment cycle from NERC. So they have a deadline kind of in the third week of March for getting offers out, basically, and so we have to work backwards from that, just to make that clear to everybody. So if you've got any questions, about the DTP generally, it's best to email nertdtp@leeds.ac.uk. I'll pop it in the chat in a second. If you've got kind of technical questions on the online application process, it's best to email our postgraduate admissions team, and I'll pop their email address in the chat as well. And cool.
Can I just bounce off of what you just
Yeah,
said? Is that
go ahead.
obviously with the Christmas break and everything's don't stress too much if the supervisor hasn't answered you before the deadline. You can have meetings afterwards.
Yeah.
So some of the other applications I had several meetings afterwards. Obviously, your paper application is less tailored based on what they said in that respect, but that doesn't always matter because in the grand scheme of things, it's your project. So what they're looking for is your ideas, and then it will just be you just have a conversation after the deadline based on whether you get on with the supervisor, and you can really think about some more of the details afterwards. But don't stress and don't not apply because the supervisor hasn't responded before the deadline.
I
Yeah,
think
exactly.
also off the bat, sorry.
No, I just
Off the
wanted
back
to
of
say
that,
yes, I agree. Go ahead.
Is like don't kind of sell yourself short, or because I didn't do a master's, I came straight from a bachelor's, and I was kind of like, oh, you know, I might not get one, like should I even bother applying? But just go for it, give it your best shot, and really focus on those transferable skills. You know, I worked for customer service for a year before I started my PhD, and I still took examples of skills that I'd gained from that, which has no relevance to chemistry at all, and it was still really useful in getting my PhD. So make sure you really highlight all your best skills, and yeah, don't give up before you've even given it a go.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really important what you just said there, that you're using work experience to help back up your application. People tend to think that academia is this kind of like bubble, and it can be a separate kind of bubble, but particularly with this DTP, we really, really care about that industry experience and project management and time management and communication. All that's so important to being like a good PhD student. So if you've got ways that you can evidence that experience, that's amazing. So yeah, I think that's we had the same. I think the same topic came up at the last webinar, basically, where we had a panelist who done the same thing, where they were working for years before they came and did their PhD, and that it's actually been really beneficial for them to do that. And that, yeah, it's not just the kind of classic academic skills that are important. Super. I'm just checking whether we've got any other kind of questions in the Q&A. I've got lots of screens, bear with me. So I might try and angle this question towards the people who've kind of done our newer interview structure. But once you had learned about that structure, how did you best prepare for the interviews, and what did you kind of think of them? How many people would have done the 3 short interview structure? A couple. Yeah.
I did them, and that was in 2020. That was.
Yeah, and so do you have any tips on how to prepare for the 3 different panels? You know, the academic and then the 2 soft skills panels being separate. Did it make any difference for how you tackled preparing for them?
Yeah, I'll pitch in if that's okay. But yeah, for me, because I'd worked for 3 years and my PhD is not related to the work that I did. They're both research oriented, but I think for the academic side of things, for the academic panel, I think I was thinking of, again, like Beth was saying about transferable skills and how, even though I worked in one system, how I could use certain skills from there and how I could sort of work here. And I think that the key sort of idea, and I think I did quite well in expressing that, is that you're willing to learn, even if it's something new academically. If it's something theoretical, then you can sit on other modules, or you can self-learn, or there are loads of training opportunities that that enable you to learn these things. So I think it's important to make that very clear that, you know, although you do have the skill set and you are an expert in A, B, and C, that you're willing to learn more and sort of go beyond just the objectives and scope of the PhD. In terms of the non-technical panels, I think, again, I would just stress just giving examples for any skills that sort of come up. I know in my interview, someone gave me 2 scenarios, saying just to see if I would be able to manage time and if I would be able to manage the project if it came to me managing it on my own. And I think just expressing that you would, and also giving an example in the past where you have, for any skills that is being referred to, I think is great. And one main thing that I would also like to say is keeping up to date with research is a great skill to have. So it's something that I would say, even when you're having your informal conversation with your supervisor, that you're and you know, that's a good skill to have as well, to do practice it if you don't, is to keep up to date with the literature, because at a PhD stage you are coming up with something new, something novel, so you want your sort of research to be different to what's already there. And I think making that clear that you're really interested in that, really keen on that, and that you practice that by, you know, reading literature, keeping up to date with the news is a great thing to is a great skill to have, and is a great skill to talk about as well.
Yeah, super. Thank you. It's basically going back to that STAR technique thing, isn't it? And I realize I've spoken about the STAR technique a lot, you know, or similar techniques without actually maybe giving a bit of context of what that is. Off the top of my head, I think it stands for situation, task, action, result. And it's the same kind of thing as you were just saying there, where you have to really evidence with an example. And it's a way of breaking down that answer so that you concisely cover everything and you're not wasting valuable time in the interview with waffle because you're not sure how to structure your answer. That's why it's so popular, because when you've got a really short time and you want to make an impact, having an answer that follows that structure can be really helpful for some people. It's not mandatory that you use that technique, but just it can really help with some people with preparing their practice answers, that they follow that kind of structure so that you can answer it without taking up all the time in the interview, so that you can then answer more questions and show your best self in the time available, because they are quite short.
I was going to add to that by saying that yes, they are very quick, and like it really is. You kind of have to just say the important stuff and not ramble. But it sounds kind of intimidating. People definitely gave me like, whoa, that's different when I told people about how it worked. But I think it does in a way take the pressure off. You don't have to give a full sort of your life story over an hour or something. You 15 minutes. You stay on topic, use your examples, and you should get out of there. Basically, it's just basically stay on topic, like I'm failing to do.
Don't worry, I'm a total rambler as well. I realized the irony when I was trying to say give a concise answer and repeating myself 2 or 3 times. But for an interview, there is a clear structure to it, and so it's much easier to stay on topic. Safi?
Could I jump in real quick?
Yeah, of course.
I guess my bit of advice would be most of the application advertisements come with a couple of papers to read. So have a read of a couple of them. And then make sure you're thinking about like the impact of the work you're doing, because that was a very specific question I got, was why is this project important? Like, what's the impact beyond just being useful knowledge for the scientific world? And then the other thing is the 3 separate interviews, make sure that there will. So I found that I felt like I embarrassed myself in one of the interviews. I probably didn't, but I felt like I did. But the 3 separate interviews meant come out of each interview, calm down, and go into it with a really like fresh plate, because like the 2 new people in each panel don't know what you've just said in the last panel, and you can go in like walk in confident. It's the whole fake it till you make it thing, head up high, shoulders back. You're confident, you know what you're talking about. You've got to a point about applying for a PhD, so you're probably pretty good at what you're doing and what you're talking about. And make sure you sit down and do your best, because that's all you can do, is try and do your best, try and not stress too much, because again, like the interviewers, they're not trying to trip you up, they're trying to get the best out of you. So kind of think of it more like a conversation than an interview. It's like a 15-minute conversation about why you're good at what you're doing, why you want to do this. And if you think of it that way, it's a little bit less stressful.
I think off the back of that, I am a nervous interviewer. I don't like interviews. I find them very stressful. I didn't do the 15-minute structure. I just had one long interview, and I wish I'd had 15 minutes. I wish I'd had a chance to go out and calm down and come back in. Because I actually was, when I was preparing for the webinar, I was looking at messages to try and see if I'd like said what questions I'd been asked, and all it was is I've completely botched that. There's no way that they'll give me a PhD, and here I am. So don't just try and relax. And what I did to try and prepare was, because I knew I would get nervous, and I tend to go blank when I get nervous. So I made a big Word document, and I looked at all the example interview questions that were on the website, and I wrote down any questions that my supervisor said might come up, and I wrote answers to them all. And I didn't memorize them, but I read them over loads and just got really comfortable with what I would say, with examples in there, to make sure that when I got nervous, I could still say what I wanted to say, because I'd gone over it so many times. So just making sure you look at the questions that are on there, because they probably will come up, not all of them, but some of them. So it's really good to have thought about those answers, especially if you've only got 15 minutes. You haven't got long to kind of think about your answer. So if you've already thought of a lot of like typical interview question answers, then it's a really good way to make sure you're extra calm and extra prepared.
Yeah, I think that's all really, really good advice. And just the thing to say, it's important, and you totally mentioned it, Beth, that you know, it's really good to do the prep and to think it all through so that that structure is there in your head and the examples are already in your head and you've done that kind of processing in advance, so you're not thinking on the hoof. But again, what you mentioned, which I think is also important kind of detail, is not to memorize them, because you do not know that you're going to get that exact question and you don't want it to come across really scripted. You still want a little bit of freshness and passion to come through in your answer. So you know, even if you're really nervous, it's having that structure embedded in your head and the examples ready without being so restricted to a memorized script that you're going to panic if you get a different answer, a different question asked of you in the interview. And we give our interviewers example questions to ask on themes, so there's no guarantee that they will follow exactly the questions that are published on the website, but they're a really great indicator of the types of things that you're going to get asked. And also we allow our interviewers to ask follow-up questions that are not going to necessarily, you know, if they pick up on something that you said and they want to know a little bit more, they can absolutely do that. And that's a really great way to turn it into a conversation, as Safi was saying. And I think that's a really great skill to learn as well, because when you go through a PhD, that's like the holy grail for your Viva at the end. You want that day to feel like a conversation.
That's why I said it.
Yeah. And speaking very much from personal experience, I was a very nervous PhD student. I hated giving presentations, would have balked at the idea of running a webinar like this. And when it got to the Viva, I had a couple of really lovely examiners who just made it like a conversation. And that's the kind of environment that you want to foster at the beginning in the interviews before you even got the PhD, because it's really great for getting your confidence up and getting comfortable speaking about your work, which is so vital if you want to have that research impact and communicate it at conferences and everything as well. Just to, yeah, that's kind of more general advice, not just exclusive to applications, but I thought I might just talk about that a little bit.
Could I also just quickly, like, we've made a big thing about the interview structure being different. The structure itself is different, but the content is very similar. Like, so still practice an interview, because undoubtedly, like, you're probably applying to multiple, you may not, but you are. But so practice in the same way you're practicing for the other interviews. Do a combination of practicing with your friends, because they're probably also applying to something, so you can do a whole switch thing. Practice with any academic that will allow you to, so whether that's through your careers service or whatever, but don't stress too much about the different structure, because it's the same, just split into 3. So don't stress that it's different at all.
Yeah, it's designed to give people that opportunity to have a little break and reset their head, and also it just gives people a bit more focused, that they know that for this interview, this is what I have to focus on, and these are the themes that are going to come up. So that's why we think it's helpful, basically, is it puts a little bit more structure in there for you as the candidate and for the interviewer as well. And hopefully that's what people have seen.
I think as well, if I can jump in.
Yeah, of course.
Although I didn't do the short interviews, everything that's been said here is all the same stuff that came up in my hour-long online interview during lockdowns. But I think one of the things we need to also consider when it comes to PhD interviews is it's a studentship. They're not expecting perfection in your answers. They're not expecting an expert in front of them. What they want is to know that someone has done some of the reading that's been asked of to try and understand some. Saf, you said the word impact. What's the impact of the work? That's one of the main questions that came up in my interview. What's the impact of this? They wanted to know what my thoughts were on how I would drive the project forward. What they want to know is that you've thought about it, that you have an idea that you can run with, but also that you can spot where your development areas are going to be. So it's not just this is what I'd like to do in the project. It's therefore I need to learn these skills. These are the things I'd like to develop to get to that point. The PhD program is not about having someone who's already doctoral worthy. It's having someone who has the potential to get to that point and seeing the path to get there. And the interviews are a really good place to find that for the panels. So don't go in there thinking you have to know everything. Be honest if you don't know something. If you are unsure, you say, I don't actually know the answer to that question. And then tell them what you're going to do to try and find the answer.
So bouncing off of that, going into an area of research that I've not really touched in my undergrad at all, there was questions like that where I said, you know, I'm aware that I have knowledge gaps, but what I would do is I'm going to look at what undergrad modules there are available to audit, or potentially any training courses that are offered by, so I have a case studentship from Met Office. So what does the Met Office offer? Anything that could help me? Just, it's okay to admit that you don't know something because they're not expecting it. And that's actually a really good skill as you go through the PhD in general, is it's okay to say, I don't know. But what you need to do is say, I don't know at the moment, but I'm going to look for opportunities to fill the gap. And then the other thing they'll look for is an appreciation that, you know, it's an independent research. So you're not, what you're not doing is just sitting, absorbing what your supervisor said and then just writing exactly what they said. You're sitting, absorbing what they're saying and then coming back with your own ideas. So give an example of when in my interview, they asked about time management and stuff. So if you were given a list of things to do and you needed to time manage, my initial answer was I'd have a conversation with my supervisor about what's the priorities. And they turned around and said, so a PhD is independently led. How would you approach it now knowing that? And I said, well, and I made them chuckle. I was like, well, I'd have a conversation with myself then. So there is an element that you just have to, it's independently led by yourself, just having to make sure you can convey that you know that there's an element of independent, is not just following what your supervisor is telling you exactly what to do.
Right, just going to jump one more time. Saf saying about undergraduate modules that you might want to try and look into. I'm going to bring a little bit of Hull knowledge in here now. University of Hull applicants, it is compulsory as part of your PhD programs to also do a PG cert. And this is going to be modules that you decide to do alongside your degree. There's one compulsory module and then others that you decide to do. And they are assessed in the same way that any modules would be assessed at master's level. But they are entirely up to you to decide, one, how many you want to do. You need to do a minimum of 60 credits. You can do more if you want. And then you can use that to actually basically fulfill a lot of your knowledge gaps that you will need for your work. If you need to do GIS, there's GIS modules. You need to do stats, there's stats modules. There's R modules. You want to go learn languages, you can do language modules. So other things you can add to your repertoire. So that's a very Hull specific thing. But I know at Leeds there are constantly emails coming through into my inbox about, oh, this master's module is undersubscribed. PhD students, you can jump in if you'd like to, just sign up here.
I mean, also, sorry, just to jump in
Go
from
on.
the Leeds perspective, is we don't have the certification, like you said, but it was really easy just to, you go through the list of what undergrad modules there are, you find who the lead, what's the word? The lead of it is. You
Like
just drop me an
the
email
course
saying,
leader, yeah.
Yeah, you just say, I'm a PhD student, just started. My supervisor's Graham Mann. Would you mind if I audited your class? Most of them come back with yes. One of them did come back and say, yes, but there's no physical space for you to come, so you can watch the recordings. So I've not had any undergrad module leader say, no, you're not an undergrad, you can't audit this class. They may just be like, priority of seating goes to the undergrads, which makes sense. So, but it's just really easy to get involved in the undergrad stuff is what I think I'm trying to say.
Yeah, basically, you know, it's another layer of support through your PhD is to use the resources that you've got at the university, because like the DTP provides like training, but because we are so broad, you know, from everyone's introductions, it's hopefully pretty clear that we've got, you know, people doing modeling where they just sit on a computer and model things all day and never do any field work, and then we've got people going to the Antarctic, and then everything in between. So we deliberately don't duplicate the kind of learning that you can get locally. We don't offer a lot of very specific technical skills training because of the fact that it wouldn't be suitable for everybody in the DTP. And we encourage everyone to make sure that they get that local training within their research group or within their school. And yeah, using undergraduate courses is a great way to do that. And then we offer training on top of that that's about, you know, career development or engaging with policy makers and a bit more forward thinking, and or about general things like building resilience or project management and all that kind of skills that are useful to any PhD student is what we offer as well, basically. So just to say, it's important to consider all that kind of stuff together. And absolutely right that if you don't know something, that's fine, and you can own that you don't know it. But again, showing that passion and that motivation and that independence and initiative, that's exactly what an academic supervisor wants to see in a PhD student, because as everyone's basically said so far, you are doing something new and you are answering an unknown. So you wouldn't be doing it if you already knew all the answers. You wouldn't be doing a PhD at that point, you'd be learning a course. You know, it's a very different thing to go from a taught master's or a undergraduate to go to a research environment, and getting comfortable with this idea that things are going to go wrong, and also that you don't know all the answers. That's really, really important. And as long as you do that with kind of like a bit of you know, confidence and a bit of problem solving on top with it, then it's absolutely, you know, fine to say in an interview you don't know something. Just, yeah, have that kind of critical thinking to work around the problem and think about how you would approach that. I've kind of basically just summarized what you guys have already said. Amazing. So at the moment we've got about 10 minutes left. So if anybody in the audience has got any burning questions that they'd like answered, please pop them in the Q&A. I will ask a couple more, and then I'll pop the link for the feedback form and signing up for the mailing list to get access to this recording and also the slides at a later date. And I'll definitely get that out before Christmas to help everyone prepare if they want. If you're more of a reflecting kind of person, you want to go away and look over things again, then if you just fill in that feedback form, then you'll get everything sent to you. Let's go for I think I might touch, because we sort of touched on following on from this idea that you might not know stuff, right? And that there might be knowledge gaps. Is there anybody here today, because I know there was last time, is there anybody here who, I think Safi, you've sort of mentioned this already, who has gone from doing something very different at undergraduate and into PhD? And I suppose, how do I frame this into a question? What did you do to approach that? Did anybody have that kind of experience where they had a very different undergrad and PhD project?
Mine was pretty different. I did a biology undergrad, a biology master's, and I now sit in geography. So I have kind of, like, what I do is sort of ecology, but it's a lot more geography focused than anything I'd done before. Like, I'd done GCSE geography at school and that was it. So I was quite upfront with my supervisor and like explained my background and explained that like I'm not a hydrologist. I know nothing about hydrology. And I think if you found a project you're interested in, you've probably got some link to it, and it's probably because it's interdisciplinary, and so you kind of lean on one side of it. And like I spent a good like 3 to 6 months just trying to like work out the hydrology stuff, and he knew that. So I think that like as long as you're kind of fairly honest with what your experiences are, as soon as I was like aware that he was willing to spend time like talking to me and we had a few meetings, I was like, he obviously doesn't think that I'm completely unsuitable. So that will give you a bit of a confidence boost. Like, their time is pretty precious to them. So if they give you a couple of like video calls and a few emails, like you're probably in a pretty good place with it all. And yeah, I like have done a load of courses and worked it all out, but also equally like we talk about things and he's like, I'm not really sure how we'll do that, but once you've got the data, we'll work it out. Like, they don't know it all either. They don't expect you to know it all. Like, you have a good amount of time to like work out what you're going to do with your project. And also, a project is not set in stone. So potentially, if someone with a hydrology background had done my project, it might be a lot more hydrology focused, but because I am doing my project, it's a lot more ecology focused. And that is also something to bear in mind. Like the titles are pretty broad, and like they will go different ways depending on the person who is doing the project. So I think that's something that's important to bear in mind.
Yeah,
And I
definitely.
think, oh,
No,
sorry.
just agreeing.
Keep
On
doing
your-
that.
Me too.
I was just going to say that a lot of I think it's kind of a given with a lot of the panorama projects that they are interdisciplinary. So chances are you haven't got heaps of experience in one area. So I did a straight chemistry degree for my bachelor's, and then my project also has some metagenomics in, and that was something I was really keen on adding to the project and it's what I've been pushing for, because it's an opportunity to learn something completely new. And like everyone said, your supervisors, if you're honest with them, your supervisors will be probably willing to help you learn. So it's a really good opportunity to learn something new, and just do lots of reading. And what I did was I made sure going into the interview that I knew the basics, so that if they asked me something technical, I wouldn't make myself look like a fool by not knowing what a gene was or something. But you can always even if you do get asked something that you don't know, you can, like we've been saying, like spin it and say, well, I don't know right now, but I'd be really interesting to look through the literature and find out more, or then spin it into something that you do know and that you can talk about with confidence. So there's a way of kind of navigating that. But I think a lot of people on this DTP will have had experience of not knowing something and not being an expert in every field, because you can't be. But that's what's so great about the panorama projects, is that you get the opportunity to do things in a field that you haven't encountered before.
Can I jump in? I think the really important thing is, it's the beauty of earth sciences, right? It's really interdisciplinary. You can bring in anything and everything. So I think the really important things are being really honest with yourself. Look at the application, maybe have like a little bullet point list going where it's like, I find this really interesting. These are the bits I do know about. These are the bits I don't know. And then have a conversation with your supervisor, whether that's either email or Zoom, about those things. So I very specifically said to my supervisor, my project's a modeling project. I don't know how to use Python. I've also very new to atmospheric science. And then he wanted me to use Linux, which I've never used before. So I said to him, I've never done these stuff. Is that going to be an issue for you? And he was like, no, it's absolutely fine. That you'll just learn it when you get here. And that's the whole point of your first year. Is like, if you look at there's some schematics and stuff on Google as like the generic plan for a PhD, right? Your first year is reading and like just getting up to the same level, getting up to the level you need. And then if you go like to the second and third, etc., is a lot more specific and more data driven, etc. But your first year is your chance to pick up on all the training, pick up on everything you need to know beforehand. So there's no expectations to know everything. There's the only thing I would say is just, you do need to be honest with yourself, and don't go into your meetings and be like, yeah, I know how to do this, because the only person that's hurting is yourself, because then you've got to struggle on your own, trying to work out what you got to Google to try and work out what you need to know. Whereas if you go to your supervisor and say, I don't know how to do it, they'll probably be like, that's fine, here's this training opportunity to go on. So like my whole of November has been in one of the training centers here at Leeds, just learning how to use Python, learning how to use different things that I knew I didn't have. But that required me to say to my supervisor, I don't have these. And he said, these things are here, use them.
Yep, exactly. And you can apply all that stuff, even though it's you're talking about during the PhD, you can apply all of that to the application and interview stage. It's like, do your reading, do the basic kind of broad brush, look at a few papers, but the main thing is to be able to showcase your transferable skills to the project, even if you don't have that background, right? So all this stuff about, not knowing something and how you approach it while you're doing your PhD, it's the same kind of attitude that you can bring to the application and to conversations with the supervisor beforehand and to the interviews. I would say, basically. I hope everyone in the panel agrees with me. I think I see a few heads nodding. But basically, I think that that's a really important thing to consider as well. We've got 3 minutes left. So if there, has anyone got a last burning question? I'm gonna just while, you know, I'll give a couple of seconds for anybody to put in a last minute question. I will just pop the feedback form link into the chat. Hopefully that works. If someone could just sanity check that for me, that would be awesome. If people wouldn't mind,
working.
Yeah, great, awesome, thank you, Sarah. If I sometimes struggle with Zoom since we're a Teams-based university. Yeah, if people could fill that in, that would be amazing. I haven't seen any kind of last-minute questions for the panel, so since it's 2 minutes to go, I would just like to thank everybody for attending and for their time, and also thank you so much to all the lovely panelists as well for your time and all the hard work you've done to answer everyone's questions and all the prep and everything. Really appreciate it, and I hope that everyone found it useful, and that you panelists also got a good experience out of it as well. And yeah, just to reiterate, good luck everyone with your applications, whether you're applying with us or with other universities and different programs, whether it's this year or you're going to think about it and apply next year. Yeah, good luck with all that. And if you're applying with us, it's 5th of January to get your applications in. And have a lovely Christmas and lovely festive wherever you are. So yeah, thank you all so much and have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you.